Want candy now?
Welcome back, everybody. Today, tonight, wherever you are on this fine planet Earth, I appreciate you coming back to check out another episode of Final Fantasy Record Keeper Relic Review. Tonight, we are going to be covering the entire Final Fantasy VIII Borrowed Dreams event, and by entire, I mean both of the two Relic banners. Because of some schedule interferences, I am forced to kind of do another one of my mashup episodes, and we're going to feature both of the banners here tonight, and I'll do a couple hundred gem draws at the very end. So I appreciate you joining me here. Let's jump right into the Relic banners. Now, as we're hopping in here, I wanted you guys to potentially consider not pulling here or waiting. The next Final Fantasy VIII event, which should be in about a month to a month and a half, will feature the upgraded and better banner format. And what this basically means is there'll be 3 6-star items, a bunch of BSBs and Legend Materia relics on it, and no Supersoul Breaks whatsoever. So overall, you'll have a better chance of getting some of these same relics and just a better selection in general. Now, if budgeting is not a huge concern of yours, then disregard that comment and feel free to make some pulls however you see fit. There are some good things on these banners, and again, let's jump right in here in the interest of time. Starting with the first banner here, which is the Laguna Edea banner, we have Arcturus. It is a 6-star gun, 159 attack, and all realms small boost ice damage. That is pretty significant and can be used by a few people, but I do believe that Laguna will use this best. He does have kind of a hybrid structure. He goes to 2 schools, the School of Ice and Lightning. And the USB unfortunately won't communicate very well with his BSB, but you'll be able to combine different abilities and skills to kind of make a good benefit out of whatever structure you decide to build him for. So starting off with Ice and the USB here, we have the Ragnarok Buster, 7 ranged physical ice non-elemental attacks to all targets, temporarily lower their ice resistance, reduce the delay from the user's actions for 1 turn, raise the user's attack a moderate amount and resistance a small amount, and reduce the delay of the user's actions for 1 turn when using an ice attack. So this is almost like a non-EX mode version of Lightning's USB, but Ice and Laguna. You have 7 ranged attacks, nothing too crazy there, but the Ice and Peril going across all targets is going to be very useful. It's going to replace his Supersoul Break for sure. It's one of the ones that I have. You have the delay reduction to kickstart what you're doing next, and unfortunately the EX mode is a unique element, so it pretty much stacks with everything including identical buffs. Because he has no EX mode here, this is not a buff that's going to stack with other attack and resistance buffs. But that is fairly rare, so you are going to get some still pretty good stackability out of that. And the reduce the delay of the user's actions for 1 turn when using an ice attack is what you're going to want to do to basically keep rolling him over with delay and increasing his DPS. Again, it won't function with his BSB, which is lightning based, but we'll go over that in a little bit. I believe it's on the second banner, and we'll check out your options in dealing with that. So basically, build this with ice dealing damage, machinist abilities. Unfortunately, it's not going to make good use of Tempest Snipe, but you can pair that with his BSB again. And overall, this is a very good USB. It's not quite as good as Lightning's USB overall, but it's kind of right behind it. And Laguna is a really good functional character, and he has great music. This is one of the relics that is coming back with Fujin's USB on the better banner structure. So if you're thinking about chasing for this one specifically, I would urge you to wait and be patient. Next up here, we do have Edea's USB, the Astral Time Rising Sun thrown weapon with split stats, 115 attack and 169 magic. And unfortunately no bonus effects. Edea really likes using mage weapons that give plus ice damage, which I believe currently I have from the World of Final Fantasy Rain characters BSB that has a global ice magic effect that she can use. With that being said, the USB here, Astral Time, is kind of like a ice version of Shantoto's USB, since we're comparing things it seems so far tonight. We have the Astral Time, 10 magic ice, dark attacks to one target, temporarily infuse the user with the power of ice, raise the user's magic a moderate amount, resistance a small amount, and cause witch abilities to trigger twice at the cost of 2 uses. So you do have the 10 attacks, which is great for ice chains if you're building with Renoa. And you have the N-Ice, which is going to up her damage. You do have that as well on her BSB, though. So you do have kind of a conflict I'm going to get to here in a second. You have raised the magic a moderate amount, resistance a small amount. Again, like Laguna's USB, it's not an EX mode, so you do have to be conscious of what you're trying to stack with this. But it, again, is kind of a rare setup. Even Sid Reigns is magic defense, so you can stack with things like that. And that's a good pairing for a dark team right there of mages. And cause the abilities to trigger twice at the cost of 2 uses. You're going to have highly honed sudden freeze and the 5-star witch ability as well. You're going to want to hone those as high as possible because this is going to be a very hungry USB. It's going to do a lot of damage, and it combines with her LMR for delay reduction and shattering freeze, the 4-star or sudden freeze, sorry, the 4-star witch ability that functions at a reduced cast time. So that to be in mind, you can get her cast time down that way and pump out a pretty good amount of DPS. But like I said, it does kind of directly conflict with her BSB, which is so amazingly good that if you get a source of delay reduction and it kind of stands alone. And again, for DPS output, it's really hard to justify going with this and honing abilities and spending so many resources to get it to where it needs to be for functionality, when her BSB is just so good that you can probably do the same amount of damage, if not more, with it and save yourself some orbs. So me personally, having her BSB, I think I'm going to stick with that. And again, wait for the next Final Fantasy VIII event, because I would prefer Fujin's USB over this one. Edea is ice damage, Witch Bay for sure, but you again can get that from her BSB, which if you don't already have is on this banner and might be a reason to kind of inspire you to make a pull. Next up here, we're down to the BSBs. The first one is for Kiros, one of the new characters. He's kind of like a support ninja, and I see this BSB as kind of a combination of Onion Knight and Vaughn from Final Fantasy XII. So 142 attack fist weapon, no bonus effects, so nothing too crazy there. BSB, X Sanguination, 10 physical dark and ice attacks to one target. Increase the attack magic of all allies a moderate amount, so Onion buff and haste burst mode to Kiros. Armor lapse, physical dark ice damage to one target and temporarily lower its defense a large amount, reduce delay before hitting. And mental lapse, basically the same thing, but you're going to be lowering its resistance. So this is strictly a defensive breakdown mechanic on these commands here. You're not going to get any offensive breakdowns here. He has a Super Soul Break, which is a Penta Break. If you're not being greedy or petty with your Soul Break gauge, you might be able to kind of combine him to be a reasonable character, but I don't see this as being a super effective or necessary combination of classes here. The ninja and support, probably not something that I would use personally, but if he's one of your fan favorite characters, or if you just want to build a team of Kiros and Ward and Laguna and have at it, then you have your options there. But outside of that, I'm not super interested in kind of having this new character here personally. And again, I feel like just kind of reiterating that waiting for the next banner may be the way to go. You have Harpoon here, Spear BSB for Ward, it's kind of his iconic trademark weapon. 142 attack, no bonus effects, and a interesting Dragoon BSB, the Massive Anchor. 7 jump, earth, and wind attacks to all targets. Temporarily infuse the user with the power of earth and haste burst mode to the user. So they made an Earth Dragoon, which he has a little bit of wind on it, but the N-Earth really defines this as an Earth BSB. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of great, or really any, Earth Dragoon abilities he can use, and there's not a huge source of DPS coming from these commands here. So again, he kind of just comes in as like a B-list character, or if you're building just a nostalgia team or just something to have fun with, you can kind of squeeze him in. But as a newer player, this is not something that you're really going to want to be pursuing heavily here. Again, he is just kind of a B-list character, and that transitions over to Final Fantasy Record Keeper here as well. Quickening Leap, 2 Earth Wind attacks to all targets, lands immediately, and has reduced delay for each time the ability is used up to 5 times. So it takes pretty much the entire burst cycle, if not longer, to fully flesh this out here. Not a huge fan. If it was 4 attacks, it'd be a little bit more appealing, but unfortunately it just kind of suffers like a lot of other Dragoon BSBs, except for Edea. But just, yeah, kind of weak on this one. Massive Presence, 2 ranged physical earth wind attacks to all targets, temporarily bargain the user's defense down and raise the attack a moderate amount. So at least it does have a bargain. It may see some functionality on an earth-based team, but unfortunately, I don't think it's going to ever hit the main lineup, or your starting lineup, rather. Next up here, Edea's Supersoul Break is an amazing BSB. It's been featured before a few times, and it's really good. Again, speaking from experience, it's like the ice version of Maria's BSB, although Edea does need to get a higher stat to hit the cap to make the command proc all 6 times, comparatively speaking to Maria. Maria's activates, I believe, at the lowest required out of all the BSBs that are like this. Nothing crazy on the stats, and again, you're going to want to equip something else that gives her all realms plus ice damage. Supersoul Break is Maelstrom, 8 magic, ice, and dark attacks to 1 target. Temporarily infuse the user with the power of ice, and haste burst mode to the user. So just kind of standard for a BSB entry, but she gets the N-Ice, which makes this, again, competitive with the USB. Glamour of Ice, the command that shines, 3 to 6 magic, ice, and dark attacks to 1 target. The number of attacks dealt depends on the user's magic stat. Astral Force, 2 magic, ice, and dark attacks to all targets. Bargain the defense down for a magic buff. So you're going to want to combine this bargain, launch this first, get that stat buff, and combine that with as many other magic buffs as you can up to the cap, and then you'll be proccing, hopefully, for these 6 attacks right here. It's kind of difficult to get in Magicite, but if you have the right gear and you can get the high enough stat, even there you'll be able to proc this at 6. And again, because you can do so much DPS here, all you need to do is combine this with cast time reduction, potentially sudden freeze, build gauge, and lead into this, or her LMR, which provides her the potential to get cast time reduction as well. And it's pretty much, if not just as good as her new USB. So for me, that doesn't make it stand out enough because I already have this to pull on this particular banner right here. Although, if you have nothing for Edea and your Final Fantasy VIII synergy is really bad and you're impatient, then by all means, potentially make a pull here. But I would kind of encourage the second banner on this event if you can't wait for the next event. Next up here, we have the Angel Wing Ice Shards, a relatively new BSB for Rinoa here. I know it's been featured at least once before because I have it myself. We have kind of just thrown weapon average stats based towards magic, and unfortunately no ice boost here, even for realm only. So we do have the Angel Wing Ice Shards, again, 8 magic ice non-elemental attacks to all targets, infuse the user with the power of ice, and haste burst mode to the user. Very similar to Edea, but it loses the dark and it's an AoE, so it won't deal quite as much damage. And that's kind of the general theme you should expect from this BSB, and Rinoa kind of stacked up to Edea. She won't do quite as much damage as Edea, but she's pretty close. She's a very good character. She also has the ability to pump out some earth damage. I know her OSB isn't super great, but it's an option. And for characters that are kind of hybrid like that, she's still pretty functional. And I wouldn't say an S-team character like Edea can be, but definitely great for Mage Ice Team builds, and definitely an A-team character for sure. Realm of Ice, 4 magic ice, non-elemental attacks to 1 target, deals more damage the higher the user's magic is. Unfortunately, you won't have the ability to do those 2 extra attacks to hit 6, and once you hit a certain cap, this modifier is not going to be useful anymore. So overall, again, the command 1 for Edea is going to be a little bit better than that. Betrayal of Magic, temporarily lower the magic of one target a large amount and raise the user's magic a moderate amount. This is actually better than Edea's bargain because you're not taking any losses here and you still get a magic moderate buff. This actually is better than Edea's bargain. So Command 2, Renoa wins here, but just overall the damage output, AoE on entry, it's not going to make as useful of a ice or dark themed mage as you'd find in Edea, but pretty close. It's kind of like she's the student there, and then Edea will be the master. Next up here, we have the Presidential Casual. Quite a funky name here for Laguna. Light armor. It's very stylish. 17, 117, 117. So on the high end for stats in terms of light armor. Minor ice resistance. Can see some usage in the Magicite dungeons potentially, but I would encourage to build for damage instead of resistance unless you're having a lot of trouble. You have the Splash of Fun, small chance to temporarily lower the target's ice resistance a small amount when using machinist abilities. You can work this into Laguna's ice side. Unfortunately, not going to be very useful at all if you're building him or using him in a lightning based situation, but overall LMR, I'm going to say it's kind of mid-tier. If you are purpose building and bringing this for a situation that you're going to make use of this ice and machinist combination, then it's probably higher than that. But just overall, it's just kind of an average LMR comparative to some of the other ones we've seen in the game that are really good. And everyone knows I love my dual casting LMRs. Sorceress Crown coming up next here. Hat for Adea. Stats all over the place, so pretty much anyone can make good use of this. The dark resistance, probably a little bit more useful than ice resistance, but it's still not damage, unfortunately. And overwhelming power, moderate chance to reduce the delay of the user's actions for one turn when using ice abilities. Again, unfortunately, it's not a double cast, but this is actually really good for Edea. It's going to complement either her BSB or her USB, but I feel like it complements her BSB a little bit more because that's where it suffers the most. It kind of needs some delay reduction. This will, again, play nicely with Edea's USB and BSB, but I feel like it's going to benefit the BSB more, and I would actually like to have that. If I could 100 gem that would be kind of awesome. Legend Materia for Renoa here. Arm warmers. You got stats all over the place as bracers. So again, in Final Fantasy VIII, anyone could kind of make good use of this. And ice resistance again. So I'm not even going to go through it. Just rewind a little bit and replay what I said for the other LMR that has ice resistance. Laguna's. Defier of Fate. Increase user's magic up to a small amount proportional to the number of black magic attacks the user has dealt. Kind of takes too long for this to scale into being useful, and then as well, once you hit a certain cap, it kind of ceases to function. So on the lower end of Legend Materia here, that's kind of where this one falls in. Both of the other two Legend Materia relics on this banner are considerably better than that one, but in Magicite, where you might not be hitting those caps, it might help Renoa out a little bit in situations like that. Not too much anything else. Next up here, we're going to kick through these really quickly to help speed up the episode here. The Supersoul Breaks. We're not going to be seeing these on banners pretty soon, so hopefully this will be kind of a thing of the past here. Kiros' guys, light armor, same stats as Legend Materia for Laguna, so kind of good for light armor stats there. And no bonus effects. Interesting times is 6 range physical attacks to all targets and a Penta Break. The Penta Break makes this a still relevant and potentially useful Supersoul Break. It's not awful, but it's not great either. And the AoE attacks here with no attachment other than just non-elemental physical means that you're not going to get a really good amount of damage from those. We've seen Penta Breaks before, like Barrett's and stuff, and if you need that extra breakdown and outside of Magicite, you might get some functionality out of it. Ward's Bandana. This is kind of like a junior version of Rajan's Supersoul Break. Hat with stats all over the place. So again, in Final Fantasy VIII Synergy, pretty much anyone can get good use out of those stats if they need them. And no bonus effects. Wordless Promise. Temporarily raise the party's attack a large amount. And Guts, or Last Stand. So it's not going to be quite as good as Rajan's Supersoul Break. It's on the next banner, so we're going to cover it. I just know that Rajan's is a considerable amount better, although the attack buff might be good for Sid missions and synergies. Chances are you're going to have a better character that's tossing out that same buff right there. So if you don't have Rajan's Super Soul Break, this could help you out a lot more if you kind of need this buff and a source of last stand. But again, for newer players, I would say that the second banner on this event is going to be better than this first one. Sorceress Gown, it is just kind of stats for Adea here, a robe. No bonus effects though, so I don't often have her wear it. And I don't know, it's average. The Super Soul Break's not very good. If you have her USB and BSB, even though it's a source of dark and peril, team build her with somebody else that's got that on a BSB or just a better Super Soul Break or something, and give Adea the chance to use her USB and BSB. She already has a really hard time gaining Soul Break other than using Sudden Freeze, the Witch ability. That'll help her out a little bit, and her LMR for the cast time reduction, but you're not really going to want to spare the extra Soul Break gauge to use this at all. And I'll come back and do all the 100 gem draws at the end.